Hello everyone, and just gonna be quickly putting on the live stream up on my Twitter, and we will begin in just a brief second. But oh boy, this has been a very interesting past couple of days in all of boxing, with so many different fights and so many fights announced, fights canceled, fights that we somehow are getting, whether or not we actually thought they were going to happen. But it's been a crazy past 12 hours, not even 12 hours. I would say a crazy past 4 hours per se. And it's now we're really going to now break down everything that's happened. I currently have on my Twitter and at carlostoromedia.com all the different fights that Matchroom Boxing announced. So we're gonna go through them, every single one of them, and strap yourselves in, because this one's a bit of a doozy. So let's start off with February 13th, the first Matchroom Boxing card that was announced, and you got IBF featherweight champion Josh Warrington going up against Mauricio Lara. And overall, not a great fight, but it is really a stay busy fight, because Josh Warrington wanted to fight Suchan, and that's a fight that I think they want to try to get that in front of a crowd. But given the state of the world, that's not a guarantee. And if really the lack of a crowd is what's stopping this fight, then I gotta be honest with you, don't hold your breath out for that fight being made anytime soon, because with the state of the world, with the state of the coronavirus, and with everything that's been going on lately, I would not doubt it if we get another spike in COVID-19 cases, which would then in turn force the British Boxing Board of Control to basically put the kibosh on any fights happening in the next few months. Now, really, they announced these fights, Matchroom, through April 10, but again, say we're in March and the COVID-19 cases keep rising, British Boxing Board of Control have no problem canceling and forcing Matchroom Boxing and all of these British promotions to close doors temporarily. They did it for January. They sort of did it for first half of February, which is why we're starting on February 13th. And overall, not the sexiest main event, but it is what it is. It's a stay busy fight for Josh Warrington in preparation for the Suchan fight, which I think is a far more interesting and a far better fight. Warrington versus Suchan is going to be a phenomenal barn burner, and I hope that fight can get made. And on the undercard, we got Zelfa Barrett versus Kiko Martinez. It's just an alright fight. Not terribly interested in Kiko Martinez these days. Lee Wood versus Reese Mold. Dalton Smith versus Lee Appleyard, which actually could be a neat little scrap. Hobie Price versus the dreaded TBA, as well as Shannon Courtney. The thing about Shannon Courtney, and we'll actually get into her in just a second, because she, Eddie Hearn posted on Twitter that she's fighting on the February 13th card, but she also has an actual fight lined up for her later on, just weeks later. So that'll be interesting to go for. I don't know if that was maybe a mistake, because Shannon, I believe Shannon is appearing on BoxRec as having a fight on February 13th, but the press release did not mention Shannon fighting on this day. So we'll see. The second fight, which we'll get into, is a far more interesting fight than whatever they got cooking up for Shannon on February 13th, if it actually does happen. So now we got February 20, which has maybe the most cursed fight in all of boxing. David Avenissium versus Josh Kelly for the European welterweight title. Really good fight. Fascinating scrap at 147 pounds, but here's the issue. This is now the fourth time that they're going to be making this fight a reality. They originally had this set for, I believe, December 2018. The fight was canceled the day of, because I think it was Josh Kelly who fell ill. One of the fighters fell ill, and they could not and they had to scrap the fight the morning of the fight, which is just crazy. Then they originally had the fight set for last March. However, that was, I believe, maybe the first Matchroom card that was going to be, or at least the one soonest, the closest to the start of the coronavirus just canceling boxing all over the world, so that got canceled a second time. Then they originally had it for January, this past January, I believe January 30. And the British Boxing Board of Control basically canceled all boxing in the UK for the month of January because of the, as I mentioned, the rise in COVID-19 cases in the UK. So these fights are announced, but let's say the spikes keep happening and we get even more COVID-19 cases in the next few weeks. A lot of these fights could get canceled. A lot of these cards could get canceled. So I really hope this fight can happen because Avenissium, I think, is one of the more underrated welterweights today. I think he's arguably a top 10 welterweight in my opinion. Josh Kelly, a good prospect. I think that this fight will tell us a lot about Josh Kelly and where he'll stand at 147 pounds. And then you got a couple of, a couple of names, but not necessarily big names on the undercard. Florian Marcu versus Ryland Charlton. I believe that fight was originally set for the January show that was going to be headlined by Avenissium and Kelly. So that kind of got moved in. Anthony Fowler versus Jorge Fortea. Not a terribly exciting fight, but Fowler is looking to break into the ranking because I believe Fortea is ranked number 15 in the world by the IBF. So that's going to be... So whoever wins the fight probably will end up getting ranked by the IBF, which, if you can somehow get yourself ranked in the IBF and slowly move your way up to a title eliminator, I mean, we said it time and time again, the IBF is very, very strict when it comes to enforcing their champions to fight their mandatories or else they get stripped of the title. We've seen it happen with Golovkin. We've seen it happen with Canelo Alvarez. So I would not be surprised if, let's say Anthony Fowler strings together a couple of wins. Maybe he could actually sneak his way into a title eliminator down the road. I don't know. But overall, not a big fight that's really on most people's radar. Amy Timlin, Carly versus Carly Skelly, and Johnny Fisher making his heavyweight pro debut against TBA. So, again, it's the second show. Not a very interesting undercard. I would argue that it's even less interesting than the February 13th card because, I mean, there's a couple of good scraps that I know are going to be, or almost guaranteed to be, a fun fight to watch on February 13th. February 20, a little bit more of a question mark, but not necessarily gonna say no to watching it. March 6th. This is the one that everyone was waiting for, or at least the fight that most people were expecting to get announced. When Matchroom was teasing all these different fights being announced. Alexander Povetkin versus Dillian Whyte 2. And really, this is a fight that, for all intents and purposes, could determine who's going to maybe challenge Tyson Fury if Tyson Fury does not get the fight against Anthony Joshua, which I still don't believe is a guaranteed thing to happen next. I hope it does happen, but there's no way of definitively saying Fury versus Joshua is going to happen. Now, Whyte was really close to getting that title shot against Tyson Fury. However, after he dropped Alexander Povetkin at Matchroom Fight Camp, Povetkin came back and just knocked Whyte's lights out in one of the best knockouts of 2020. And we got the rematch. Originally, the rematch was supposed to happen in December. And the fight got canceled because Povetkin tested positive for COVID. And for a while, we were kind of left in this weird in-between space of, is the fight going to happen? What's the status of Alexander Povetkin? Povetkin's team said, I believe they said that he fully recovered and started training camp on January 12th. So right now they got about a little less than 2 months to prepare for the fight. But as I mentioned, they were supposed to fight in December, so it's not like they were starting out from scratch. Plus, Povetkin versus Whyte 1 didn't take place that long ago. It took place, I believe, in late summer. So not a long wait if you really think about it between fights for Povetkin and Whyte. Because again, they were supposed to fight last year. It just that Povetkin got COVID, so just wasn't able to that fight just couldn't happen. And then on the undercard, this one is actually a really good fight I'm very interested in. Ted Cheeseman versus James Metcalf for the British junior middleweight title. Cheeseman, and for those of you who have been following this channel for a long, long time, may remember my interview with Ted Cheeseman from last summer. Cheeseman fought Sam Eggington, and a lot of people had Eggington as a big favorite. I think part of it is due to the fact that Eggington was ranked so high on paper in the IBF, and Cheeseman was not even ranked in the top 15. But I've said it multiple times, that fight is a hell of a lot closer than some people would admit. I think Ted Cheeseman was more than capable of beating Sam Eggington, and Ted Cheeseman ended up beating Sam Eggington to get back into the potential British, maybe, regional title hunt. Not necessarily in the world title level just yet, but it's a step in the right direction. I think this will be a good fight. I think Ted Cheeseman is a guy that is capable of giving us some good scraps. The fight against Sam Eggington was certainly a fun one. Then you got Fabio Wardley going up against former world title challenger Eric Molina. Wardley, young heavyweight prospect, or at least young in his pro career. He's going to be going up against Eric Molina, which at this point in 2021, a win against Eric Molina doesn't really say a whole lot, but it's a nice win to put on your resume, a guy who once challenged for the heavyweight title. So I expect Fabio to win, and this could potentially catapult him maybe into the rankings of the sanctioning bodies, or higher in some people's rankings. So Wardley is part of a huge crop of heavyweight prospects, in which you got guys like Joe Joyce, Daniel Dubois, even though he lost against Joe Joyce not that long ago, but Dubois still is someone to keep an eye out for. Filip Hrgovic, just so many different guys at heavyweight that that are primed to take over for the future. And we're not necessarily done. And we're not necessarily done with the development of some of these guys. I think Fabio is going to win. I don't think this necessarily will tell us a lot about Fabio Wardley if he does end up beating Eric Molina. If he knocks him out, that's great, but as I mentioned, not necessarily tells us a whole lot about Fabio Wardley, because Eric Molina passes prime. Never a real world-class elite boxer at heavyweight. So, again, it's a nice name to put on your resume, but ultimately will not tell me a whole lot about how high his ceiling can be. Unless he performs poorly or even loses to Eric Molina. Then that'll tell me that, maybe the ceiling is not as high as some had hoped. And then you got on the undercard for March 6th, Campbell Hatton, who is the son of Ricky Hatton, former world champion and the former British superstar and world champion. He's going to be making, I believe this is his Matchroom debut or his pro debut. I can't remember off the top of my head, but he's going to be facing against an opponent that will be determined at a later date. And then lastly, you got Yusuf Kumari versus Kane Baker, rounding out March 6th. By the way, none of these fight cards have had a location or a venue announced, as far as I can tell. They've not announced a proper venue for these fights, so we'll see how much that'll change in the coming weeks. Maybe it'll be, who knows? Hey, maybe we'll put it back on Eddie Hearn's backyard. I would absolutely love it if that happens. I mean, the Eddie Hearn backyard shows were actually really good. I know that's not necessarily a popular thing to say, but I actually thought those shows were really, really good, were really fun. Some of the best series of boxing shows in 2020, in my opinion. Which, again, not necessarily the most popular opinion, but that's my opinion nonetheless. And all of these fights are going to be streamed on DAZN in all globally, except for the UK and Ireland. And I believe with the Dillian Whyte and Alexander Povetkin, that's going to be on Sky Sports Box Office in the UK and in Ireland, if I remember correctly. Then we got two more shows to go through the Matchroom on the Matchroom side. You got March 20, Lorenzo Coley versus, and I apologize if I mispronounced this. I really, really do apologize. Krzysztof Glowacki for the WBO Cruiserweight title, the vacant title that was a part of this massive controversy in Latvia with Glowacki and Mairis Briedis And some of you may remember the infamous fight where both of these guys were punching each other way after the bell, I think with the second or the third round, and it was bizarre. The referee, Robert Bird, did not hear the bell, supposedly, even though everyone could hear the bell, and there were knockdowns, I think, after the bell, so that's, and there was a huge battle between Briedis and the WBO and Glavatsky's. It was very bizarre, but it ultimately ended in how we all expected, the WBO title being vacated and Glavatsky's getting his long overdue shot at it. KJ1272 on live chat says, Carlos, Okoli fight is going to be excellent. I agree. I love Lawrence Okoli. I think he's a very promising cruiserweight, and it's weird to call him a prospect, but he's a solid fighter at 200 pounds, and he's a guy that I think will inject some fresh blood to a cruiserweight division that has seen some of its top stars in recent years move up to the heavyweight division. Mainly guys like Alexander Usyk, Muragasiev, Junior Dorticos, I believe, is making the transition to heavyweight. So this is a division that definitely needs some fresh faces, and Lawrence Okoli is going to inject some fresh blood into that division. And I think Okoli wins this one. I think it'll be a close, competitive fight, but I think that this will be his coming out party. That March 20 show is fascinating in my opinion, because you also got on the undercard Chantel Cameron versus Melissa Hernandez for Cameron's, I believe, WBC junior welterweight title, and that is a fight that I think it's a decent one. Not necessarily the best fight imaginable, but I can believe that will be a fun scrap. Chantel Cameron is a solid fighter at 140 pounds, and here's kind of my issue with the 140-pound division, is that is it in a bit of a holding pattern with now that Katie Taylor, it's a 135-pound undisputed champion, but she's fought at 140 pounds before, and then you also got Jessica McCaskill, who's the undisputed champion at 147 pounds. I would not doubt it if down the road we'll see Katie Taylor make her return to 140, wins a couple of titles, and sets up a rematch against Jessica McCaskill. Maybe a fight against Chantel Cameron could be in the works if Chantel Cameron emerges victorious. Melissa Hernandez, not the most famous female Puerto Rican boxer, at the very least not at the level of a Amanda Serrano, but she has been in the game for quite a while. She's only fought once since 2016, and her last fight, I believe, was 2019, so I can't really say how good Melissa Hernandez is going to look, because there's really not much as far as recent history to kind of look forward to, so there's a lot of intrigue in this fight as far as knowing what Melissa Hernandez can do against a fighter, a very good fighter, arguably the best in the world at 140 pounds in Chantel Cameron. I think Cameron wins this one, but I'm certainly intrigued by this one. Chris Bilton-Smith versus Dion Juma, Ramla Ali, Solomon Dakers, and Joe Cordina round out March 20. And then lastly, April 10, Conor Benn versus Samuel Vargas, Rachel Ball versus Shannon Courtney 2, Savannah Marshall, Felix Cash, and Cash Farouk. Those were the names announced for April 10. I will say this. Conor Benn versus Samuel Vargas is the main event of that show. That is not the most interesting fight on paper of this card. That is definitely Rachel Ball versus Shannon Courtney 2. You look back into the Matchroom Fight Camp and how and there has been some really good fights and some intriguing results throughout Matchroom Fight Camp. This fight, Rachel Ball versus Shannon Courtney, might have been the most interesting, one of the most fascinating fights to look back on, because Rachel Ball was this highly touted prospect, and Shannon surprised everyone by dropping Rachel in the very first round. Rachel got back up, and then we just had this really good women's fight that ended, almost a too close to call type of situation, but Shannon emerged victorious. I thought Shannon won as well. Rachel did not agree, but we did eventually get now this announcement that Rachel and Shannon are going to be fighting for a world title. They're going to be fighting for a WBA world title on that show. I love this fight. I think this fight is going to be fantastic. I think it's going to be the best fight of the card. Conor Benn versus Samuel Vargas, a nice test for Conor Benn, but ultimately not a step above too much when it came to Conor Benn's win over Sebastian Formella. I think Samuel Vargas is right around that level, but I think it's nice to keep the consistency as far as opponent level for Conor Benn. There's no rush in putting Conor Benn into the world title picture. There is no rush. I mean, Conor Benn is still a prospect, is still a nice burgeoning welterweight prospect, and really the welterweight division is cluttered right now with so many big names and so many stars and so many top fighters. You can take your time with a guy like Conor Benn, and I don't know if Conor Benn will ever sniff a world title shot at welterweight, given that PBC controls most of the titles at 147 pounds. But in the meantime, we'll be getting some good performances from Conor Benn. Conor Benn looked great against Sebastian Formella. I believe he shut him out or almost shut him out when they fought a couple of months ago. So, Savannah Marshall, she's going to be defending her WBO super middleweight title, but no opponent was announced. Felix Cash Farouk, separate fights. Not a whole lot to sort of glean from there, but I think that we're going to get some solid fights, and in the show. Rachel Paul versus Shannon Courtney. That's gonna be fantastic in my opinion. And I gotta tell you, this is slowly turning, the women's fights that Matchroom Boxing has been giving us throughout the last few months. They have been absolutely stellar. Just absolute insanity with how good some of these fights were. Katie Taylor versus Delphine Pursoon 2. Another great fight. Rachel Ball versus Shannon the first time around. That was also a really good fight. And we also got Terry Harper versus Natasha Jonas. Another really good fight. Arguably the best women's fight of the year. I know some people that are calling it one of the best fights of the year regardless of gender. So I'm looking forward to a lot of these women's fights in the coming months. Hopefully Matchroom Boxing does not get forced to shut down because of COVID-19, and hopefully all of these fights actually happen. But recent history has shown us that is not the case, and I don't think that we're going to be getting all of these fights. I hope I'm wrong, but how many times have we had a full card from a major promotion and not have one fight affected by COVID-19? So these are the fights for now, and oddly enough, that's not the only fight card that was made official. So we've been kind of hearing this for a few weeks, and there were a couple of people that believed it. There were some people that did not, under any circumstances, even entertain the possibility that those fights were actually going to happen. And it turns out those fights are actually happening. Don King, everyone. That's right, the infamous, legendary, whatever you want to call him, promoter is going to have a fight card on January 29 in Hollywood, Florida. Close off to the public, but it's going to be a pay-per-view event. $19.95 is the price for that pay-per-view. And we have a really I don't even know what to call this. I don't even know what to call this card. It's something. Mahmoud Char versus Trevor Bryan for the, and I hate calling this, but for the WBA regular, or in the WBA's eyes, World Heavyweight title, which by the way is kind of bullshit, but that's neither here nor there. This is a fight that is supposedly for a world title. Mamuchard has not fought since 2017. Trevor Bryan has not fought since 2018. It is now 2021. You tell me how good these, what is the status of both fighters as far as putting them in the pantheon of the heavyweight division. They're certainly not top 10, certainly not top 20, maybe not even top 30. And that's going to be your main event. And then you got Beterbiev Shimonov versus Rafael Murphy for the WBA Cruiserweight title. Which is another fight that's kind of leaving your head scratching, what the hell is this? And really, this is just so bizarre. And then lastly, the last live fight, and that's the key word, live fight on the Don King show, is Bermane Stiverne in a special attraction. Which are two words that I probably would never use to describe Bermane Stiverne fights in 2021, special or attraction. But that is what the press release that I got said. A special attraction featuring former WBC heavyweight champion Bermane Stiverne, which, sure. You want to call it a special attraction? I call that a bathroom break. To be honest with you, I call it the bathroom match. So I will see what that card has in store for us. The other interesting thing is that Don King promised us 3, and I quote, classic fights of the past airing on the pay-per-view, and he did not reveal. Don King did not reveal what those fights were. So we are left with a mystery. They could be anything. It could be a myriad of different fights of legendary world title fights from the past that Don King has available for us to watch on this pay-per-view on January 29. Or it could end up just being 3 random Trevor Bryan fights that, Don King will just retroactively call a classic fight because he believes that Trevor Bryan's going to end up winning the WBA title. I don't really want to call it a title, but it is what it is. It sucks, and the WBA is guilty of creating this issue of too many world titles, and they only have themselves to blame. Again, we haven't seen Trevor Bryan in almost 3 years. We haven't seen Mamuchard in almost 4 years. And this is still for a quote-unquote WBA title. And it's $20. This fight card costs the same as 1 month's subscription of DAZN. And I'm not advocating for any one particular party, but let's remember earlier on this, I guess, podcast, whatever you want to call it, February 13th, February 20, March 6th, all within a month, you get Povetkin, Whyte 2, Avenissium, Josh Kelly, Josh Warrington. You also get Anthony Fowler, Ted Cheeseman. You get a number of decent British names on those cards, and that costs the same as this one singular card headlined by 2 guys who have not seen ring action in combined almost 7 years. And guess what? I'm still going to watch it. I'm still going to watch the Don King card, because my morbid curiosity is going to get the best of me. So unfortunately, that's how it be sometimes with this. Kyle Johnson, hi Kyle, how's it going? On the live chat, what about Tony Yoka? Well, what about Tony Yoka? Man, it's so weird. Tony Yoka's career trajectory. I mean, there's still hope Tony Yoka becomes this really big star in the heavyweight division, but we'll see if he no longer has any more issues with international or domestic drug agencies, because that's still a fight, because that's been a fight that he's been battling for quite some time. I like Tony Yoka, but I'm still not sold on Tony as this future superstar in the heavyweight division. Physically, he has all the tools in the world, but I am still left wondering how good he can be. We saw some flashes of how good Tony Yoka can be in his last fight, but I'm still wary of his potential. And then I guess the last thing, or at the very least, the last thing that I put on the title of this breaking news podcast-ish is Artur Beterbiev. So Artur Beterbiev has been trying to get back in the ring for months, and every time out that we're close to an Artur Beterbiev fight, the fight just gets called off or canceled or postponed for a myriad of reasons. But, poor Artur Beterbiev. He was supposed to fight Adam Danis earlier this year, I believe in October. Then Artur Beterbiev got hit with a back injury. Then the fight got moved to January. And then that fight got postponed because Beterbiev tested positive for COVID-19. Well, it was a quick recovery for Beterbiev, because now the WBC has stated that Beterbiev is going to be fighting on March 30th in Russia, in Moscow more specifically, which, actually no, not March 30, March 20th. My mistake. I kind of got a little bit ahead of myself because March 30th is actually my birthday, but it doesn't look like there's going to be any big fight on my birthday, so hey, I could take that as a good thing or as a bad thing, that I can celebrate it without worrying about working or writing or anything of that sort. So it's a damn shame. It really is a damn shame that Artur Beterbiev has been hit with such bad luck throughout the last 12 months. This is a guy who, when he beat Alexander Vostok in Philadelphia, this is a guy that was on top of the light heavyweight division. And he still is. He still is, on top, the number one guy at 175 pounds. He, holding the WBC and the IBF title. However, the one problem is that for whatever reason, he just can't get into the ring. Injuries, coronavirus, and now his first fight back after all of this, back and forth and trying to get a fight, it's against Adam Danis, who is, I suppose, the mandatory challenger, but not even because he won a title eliminator or anything of the sorts. In fact, Adam lost a title eliminator against Meng Feng Long, who is actually supposed to be the guy fighting Beterbiev right now, but they originally were going to try to make that fight last year. And Meng Feng Long there were some travel issues. So he could have traveled to Russia and had the fight, no problem whatsoever. The issue was coming back, because if he'd gone to Russia, he wouldn't have a way back into his home country of China or back into New Jersey and the United States where he is training. So it's a shame, because Meng Feng Long worked to get this title shot. I don't think he had much of a chance of winning this fight, but, per the IBF, he was owed a title shot, and because the coronavirus is kind of shutting a lot of places down all over the world, as far as travel, it made things a lot harder for him. So I don't know I don't know if Meng Feng Long is going to get his title shot. I'm not looking forward to Beterbiev's fight against Adam. I think Beterbiev is several leagues above Adam, and I think this will end in a fairly quick one. The only thing that might prevent me from fully outright saying, oh yeah, this is going to be a quick knockout victory for Artur Beterbiev, is the fact that he hasn't been in the ring in so long. And, Father Time is undefeated, and Artur is in his mid-30s, and I just hope he doesn't get a big fight when he's now, way over the hill, when he's been so good for so long. And it's a real damn shame that we are entering his mid-30s, and this is still technically the start of his unified title reign, because Artur Beterbiev just can't seem to catch a break when it comes to fights. So I hope we get, Beterbiev against Canelo. That was a fight a lot of people wanted to see, because Artur Beterbiev probably could have given Canelo a lot of trouble, maybe even beat him, because of just how physically dominant and physically strong Artur Beterbiev is, and overall his skill set is just one of the best in boxing, which is why some people originally had Beterbiev, sort of outside looking in into the pound-for-pound top 10. Now it's not so much the case, because we just don't quite know what he's going to look like after being out of the ring for so long. And now we're gonna enter a couple of news tidbits before we're gonna close things off. Per Dan Raphael, Sergey Kovalev has tested positive for a synthetic testosterone, and his fight against Bektemir Melikuziev, which was originally set to take place on January 30, appears to be canceled. Or at the very least, those two ain't fighting on January 30, which, I mean, it's a damn shame because I would have loved to see what Bektemir Melikuziev would have done. I'm very, very high on him. I think he is the guy that could emerge as a real star, as a real threat and a world title contender. Maybe not too far off into the future. And this fight would have told us a lot about him. But overall, there were a lot of people that wanted to see Sergey Kovalev get his comeuppance after all of the outside the ring transgressions and all the reports that really do not look good when you read them about Sergey Kovalev. So they were really excited to just see Bektemir Melikuziev beat up Sergey Kovalev. And I'll admit, there's part of me that also kind of wanted to see that too. And I think a lot of people were picking Melikuziev really more so wishful thinking than just objective predictions. But looks like we are not going to see Melikuziev. I really hope we get Bektemir get a fight against an established veteran or contender, because if Bektemir Melikuziev can now get a fight against Sergey Kovalev so early in his pro career, you can put him up there against, I don't know, put him against the Sullivan Barrera. I mean, he's a guy that's always itching to get fights in, so maybe we could see that fight happening, or maybe they revisit, well, I don't know. Actually, what am I talking about? But highly doubtful that they're going to ever revisit Kovalev versus Melikuziev at this point. Hard to kind of revisit or visit any fight involving Kovalev for quite some time. So I'm certainly not gonna cry over not seeing Sergey Kovalev fight, because I mean I'm tired of everything about Kovalev. So we'll see. I really want to see Bektemir in a big fight soon. And lastly, we got to talk about Adrian Broner. Adrian Broner, who was originally supposed to fight Pedro Campa. It was not announced, but the reports were saying he was going to be fighting Pedro Campa on February 13th on Showtime. And then it turns out Campa had the COVID. So, not much to say there except one fighter that was interestingly linked to a fight against Adrian Broner is Michael Rivera, a lightweight prospect from PBC who I know some people are very, very high on and has looked good at times. He was actually the leading candidate, I believe, according to Jake Donovan. He was the leading candidate, or at least early on, to maybe replace Adrian Broner, which would be a very interesting fight in the sense that Broner doesn't really get those kinds of opponents. He's so used to fighting big names like Mikey Garcia, Jesse Vargas, Manny Pacquiao, and Sean Porter, Marcos Maidana. But look, man, this is another weird instance of Adrian Broner getting a main event spot, even though he hasn't really done much to earn it as far as what he's done inside the ring. He has not had a win since 2017. And he has not had a convincing win since 2016. The win against Adrian Granados in 2017 was a split decision in which I actually thought Adrian Granados won. Now, you can argue one way or the other, but I actually thought that Adrian Granados beat Adrian Broner back in 2017. So, I am interested in seeing what Adrian Broner can do. I will give him credit. He has, from the looks of it, on social media, he's, been taking he's taking things seriously. He wants to do he wants to, I guess, right the wrongs of some of the off the field stuff. I mean, look, it's no question that Adrian Broner is a heat magnet, and he will get a lot of eyeballs onto Showtime, even when he's not winning fights. He is the kind of guy that you just love to watch to see lose, and that's why Adrian Broner is still getting these kinds of fights, because in the pro wrestling sense, Broner is a great heel in which he will get you to watch him just so that you can watch him lose. And despite him not winning his last 3 fights, his last win being in 2017, he's still getting a main event spot. And if he wins his next fight, he'll probably go up against, a former world title challenger. And after that, we'll see. I mean, if he fights Michael Rivera, which is still not a guarantee, I don't know. I don't know what's going to be. I don't know what to really expect. So we'll see. It's been 2 years since we last saw Adrian Broner. And I really, really don't know what to expect, because he did not look good at all against Manny Pacquiao. In my opinion, he lost 10 of those 12 rounds. And didn't have the greatest performance against Jesse Vargas. Did not look great against Mikey Garcia. So I don't know. I'm definitely intrigued by an Adrian Broner return, but I don't know what to expect out of an Adrian Broner fight in 2021. So I think that about wraps it up for this, I guess, breaking news podcast video. I don't know what to call it at this point. I mean, I don't know if I want to call this like a straight up podcast in general, but I do appreciate all of you guys who chimed in the live chat, who watched this. Really, really appreciate it. Head on over to this channel, Carlos Toro Media, for interviews. And just recently, the Zoom press conference between Angelo Leo and Stephen Fulton Jr. And we also got an interview with Mike Quan Williams, who's going to be fighting on ShoBox next Wednesday, which is going to be, I believe, Showtime's first card of 2021, right before Angelo Leo versus Stephen Fulton. And then we got a couple of nice things in the bag for next week. So until then, subscribe to Carlos Toro Media, hit the bell icon for notifications on when new videos drop, and I will see you guys in the next one.